Your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. I knew that if I failed, I wouldn't regret that. But I knew the one thing I might regret is not trying. If you can't tolerate critics, don't do anything new or interesting. What we need to do is always lean into the future. When the world changes around you and when it changes against you, what used to be a tailwind is now a headwind. You have to lean into that and figure out what to do, because complaining isn't a strategy. We innovate by starting with the customer and working backwards. That becomes the touchstone for how we invent. If you're not stubborn, you'll give up on experiments too soon. And if you're not flexible, you'll pound your head against the wall and you won't see a different solution to a problem you're trying to solve. Invention is not disruptive, only customer adoption is disruptive. The common question that gets asked in business is, why? That's a good question, but an equally valid question is, why not? One of the only ways to get out of a tight box is to invent your way out. I believe you have to be willing to be misunderstood if you're going to innovate. We see our customers as invited guests to a party, and we are the hosts. It's our job every day to make every important aspect of the customer experience a little bit better. A brand for a company is like a reputation for a person. You earn reputation by trying to do hard things well. The best customer service is if the customer doesn't need to call you, doesn't need to talk to you, it just works. If you're not doing some things that are crazy, then you're doing the wrong things. We are stubborn on vision, we are flexible on details. You can have a job, or you can have a career, or you can have a calling, and the best thing is, you can have a calling at any age. I think frugality drives innovation, just like other constraints do. One of the only ways to get out of a tight box is to invent your way out. If you're going to invent, it means you're going to experiment. And if you're going to experiment, you're going to fail. And if you're going to fail, you have to think long term. I'd rather interview 50 people and not hire anyone than hire the wrong person. If you're long-term oriented, customer interests and shareholder interests are aligned. I'm not in this for the short term, I'm in this for the long term. The best way to predict the future is to invent it. If you decide that you're going to do only the things you know are going to work, you're going to leave a lot of opportunity on the table. What's dangerous is not to evolve. In the old world, you devoted 30% of your time to building a great service and 70% of your time to shouting about it. In the new world, that inverts. There are two kinds of companies: those that work to try to charge more and those that work to charge less. We will be the second. One of the huge mistakes people make is that they try to force an interest on themselves. You don't choose your passions. Your passions choose you. We're not competitor obsessed, we're customer obsessed. We start with the customer and work backward. If you're good at something, it's probably something you love. You don't want to negotiate the price of simple things you buy every day. What really matters is companies that don't continue to experiment, companies that don't embrace failure. They eventually get in a desperate position where the only thing they can do, a Hail Mary bet at the end of their corporate existence. All businesses need to be young forever. If your customer base ages with you, you're Woolworths. In business, what's dangerous is not to evolve. The smartest people are constantly revising their understanding, reconsidering a problem they thought they'd already solved. They're open to new points of view, new information, new ideas, contradictions, and challenges to their own way of thinking. If you double the number of experiments you do per year, you're going to double your inventiveness. Life's too short to hang out with people who aren't resourceful. The human brain is an incredible pattern matching machine. I think that if you do something and it turns out pretty good, then you should go do something else wonderful, not dwell on it for too long. There will always be serendipity involved in discovery. You want to be stubborn on the vision and flexible on the details. If you're not stubborn, you'll give up on experiments too soon. You have to be willing to be misunderstood if you're going to innovate. If you're long-term oriented, you can take unconventional approaches. What we need to do is always lean into the future. Successful entrepreneurs are the ones who are still standing after the punches. You can't shrink your way to profitability. The balance of power is shifting toward consumers and away from companies. The best customer service is if the customer doesn't need to call you. If you're not customer-centric, you're going to fail. It's not an experiment if you know it's going to work. I believe you have to be willing to be misunderstood if you're going to innovate. Work hard, have fun, make history. You want to be customer-obsessed, not competitor-obsessed. You have to be willing to be misunderstood if you're going to innovate. Your margin is my opportunity. What's dangerous is not to evolve. If you never want to be criticized, for goodness sake, don't do anything new. I don't want to use my creative energy on somebody else's user interface. We innovate by starting with the customer and working backward. That becomes the touchstone for how we invent. The best customer service is if the customer doesn't need to call you, doesn't need to talk to you, it just works.